So part 4 of this little tutorial, because having taught for over 10 years, you do sort of work it out what it is. When you work with actors every day, you start to, see what is working and what is not, and ways to get the actor towards it. So what we might start to do now is to increase the strength of the action playing. Now, a way to get into the action playing is, say a cliched sentence of what it is you're doing. Like if it's to threat, you might say, "I'll kill you if you do that." If it's to soothe, you might say, "Hey, it's going to be okay, don't worry, be fine." So we'll often say a cliched sentence which helps us play the action, obviously, and then start to put in the actual text. So instead of saying, if I decided to use soothing, I might say, "Hey, listen, it's going to be okay. Shh, it's no problem, it's no problem. But my speech is to be or not to be." It might be, "To be or not to be, that is the question. Whether it is noble in the mind to suffer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against the sea of troubles and by opposing end them." So we start to get into understanding what it is we're doing at the start of the speech. Now, we can make that substitution, that dialogue substitution of doing an improvisation of the cliche. We could think about what cliche character might do such and such a thing. It might be a nurse comforting a baby. We'll say the action is to inspire. Who does that? Well, we might look at a football coach, "Come on, we've got to win," It's to be or not to be, that is the question, So it might be, so we start to build up a way of finding the cliche and then transferring the cliche, doing a substitution of the cliche into the actual words. Okay, and that starts to get actors engaged in it, starting to really do it. They start, because this capacity for playing the action is sort of latent within you, basically. You don't really need to learn anything to bring that out of yourself. You just got to wake it up. So the other thing I often use is a cushion, or in this case a tea towel, or a scarf, the scarf of truth, to have something physical to play with. So if it is the soothing, then you can, to be or not to be, that is the question. You can start to use this, or it could be the threat, to be or not to be, that's the question. You can start to hit it. Or it might be, say the action is to intrigue. Well, what would be the cliched character of someone who might intrigue? Or maybe it's a magician. "Oh, look into my eyes. Hey, what have I got here? A magic thing." And then you can perhaps use this. "Oh, look what I've got here. To be or not to be, that is the question." And we can start to play with these cliches. What is good about using an object is because it's tactile. We can create, i.e. the intimacy or the aggression that's needed. Or, it might be to mock, flicking, jabbing, mocking something. Having a physical thing to do that with can get you into it. So you can practice with the object, then you let go of the object and that energy starts to stay with you. You just start to remember it, just like you remember the lines. There's never a point where you didn't know the lines, then did know them. They just gradually build up. And even when you know them, you can forget them. So the French word for rehearsal is repetition, which is the most useful word for acting. You just keep doing it, and it starts to get into your body, as it were. Okay, so we'll have started to up the temperature of the actions, if you like. Now, some people would say, well, that is, in a way, awakening the emotional state. And yeah, it is. But again, I try to keep actors away from that. I always say, let the emotions then just flow through you, because you can't really control them anyway. And there's nothing worse than an actor feeling their own emotions, or a human. It's everything should be going outwards. Yeah, in life, we'll occasionally wait while a friend indulges on their own feelings. But you're aware that you're having to really give a lot to them and be patient with them. But that's not what a story is. I mean, everything I'm talking about here, it's not to do with psychiatry, psychology, whatever. It's to just do with acting. I'm only talking about acting technique. And acting technique is always rooted in storytelling to a paying audience. It's not a therapy session, Going for a walk is therapeutic, but doing the dishes, maybe they should, psychiatrists should say, come to my house and do the dishes. You'll feel better. But yeah, a lot of the mind problem is taking it off yourself and putting it onto someone else, putting your focus out to something else. Now, it might seem to the audience like you're not doing that. But, when a child cries for an ice cream, it's not because they're upset, it's because they're trying to upset the parent in order to get the sympathy, to get the ice cream. And that's what good acting is, There's lots of schools of thought of acting where you indulge the actor in their personal experiences and their misery. But, some of these classes just have to fill time. But I'll talk a little bit about the experience of teaching big group classes and techniques which have evolved simply to fill time in those classes. Anyway, so we're back to our speech. We've got it going. We know our high point, we know our actions, and we're at a stage where we start to settle on something we really like. But even once we've settled on the way through this speech that makes sense to us, that we enjoy, that we find fun, I will still always say to an actor every so often, right, now do it replace the gentle actions for harsh actions, just to remind them that in the casting they may well be asked to do that. And we'll be accompanying it with a contrasting modern speech. But really, what we do with the modern speech is really, it's pretty much the same as what you do with Shakespeare. And then what we'll do is we'll look for two contrasting speeches. So we'll look for, if your Shakespeare was tragic, then we'll look for something comic or romantic or heroic. If your modern was, dramatic, then something, again, romantic, heroic, comedic. We'll look for that mix. And ideally, I like the actors to have at least 3 Shakespeares and at least 3 moderns. Because the other thing can happen, if you're auditioning over a period of a few months, you can sort of tire of one of your speeches. But it feels, you're just fed up with it. So you need these other ones to clip into. And it's often, I found it a couple of times, where the actor's initial speech has been really full of fireworks, really wonderful speech, they're acting it really well, but they have got fed up with it after 3 months. And then we've done quite the dry speech, but because their command of it is so strong, it becomes more impressive. And often the audition panel, they are interested in how you are really on top of what it is you're doing and you know what you're doing, even if the speech itself isn't that interesting. It's your command of it starts to become noteworthy. Okay, so we build up these collection of speeches.